Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky, and I have been looking forward to doing this podcast for a long time. I'm here with my son, SAXTON HARTSKY, who is the founder and owner of Wildborn Outdoors. And I've been telling you guys for a long time now that we were going to start having podcast guests, but he has been my number one guest. I did not want to start having guests on until I had SAXTON on here with me. It's easy for me to brag about him because I'm his dad, but he is just somebody that I already look up to, even though he's pretty young, for who he is as a hunter. And so I wanted to be able to kick off all of these podcast guests with him, get him some exposure with you guys, because he is just a wealth of information that he doesn't usually share, doesn't, necessarily like being on camera and just talking about himself and what he's doing. And so I want to try to pull some of this stuff out for him because he is such a great resource and already at a young age has a lot to offer, even really experienced old mountain goats like myself. And even last year, he helped my hunt be successful. He wasn't there, but just some advice he gave me. And so want to get going there. I think instead of doing like a big introduction, I'm going to just start off and just dive into asking Saxton some questions. And I think that some of the stories and who he is and what he has going on will come out throughout the podcast. So Saxton, I'm really stoked to have you here. Thank you for doing this. I know it's a little bit painful for you, but it's going to be good. So, for a lot of people who don't know yet, I want you to describe for us, tell us who you are as a hunter today, not necessarily like what you hunt, but how you hunt and what it means to you.
All right, so I'm just really aggressive. I believe that if you work hard, you can kill about anything you want. And I'm just a go, go, go. So I go every single day that I can. If it allows me physically and mentally to do it. And I just go until I either can't or I achieve my goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's what really separates him from a lot of folks, even myself included. Like he's young, he's pretty much devoted his life to this hunting lifestyle, and so he has an opportunity to be out there a lot, and he's created that for himself. His work that he does to fund his hunting and his everyday pursuits, everything is designed by him to be able to get out there. But he just puts in an insane amount of time and miles, and that obviously contributes to the success. But yeah, definitely go, go, go just about every day of the year, I feel like. And if he's not out there, he's planning to be out there, and looking at maps and looking at what the weather's going to be like in the coming days, and just all of it, where the next adventure is going to take him and where it's going to help him either find more sheds or kill more animals. And you grew up around the hunting. I was taking you every chance I got. But when did the hunting stop being about just being around it and really become your identity and something that you knew you wanted to own?
I think the first year I hunted by myself, and not because it was by myself, but it just made me think about other things and really get to enjoy, I don't know, just being out there by myself. And sometimes it'd be hard, doing it solo, not having anybody to celebrate with or be with you when something cool happened. But yeah, I think being by myself out there really struck the drive to just get in my own groove and really strike the passion of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And do it your own way too. I think you've always been really independent, and I think that showed. As soon as he had his own vehicle and could do it on his own, he was out there. Maybe it was because I couldn't go with him, or just because he didn't want to waste a minute. He just wanted to be out there every chance he could.
Yeah.
And when he was young and was finally able to start hunting elk, It was a couple of years before we actually hunted together because I had his older brother with me a lot, and especially like during elk season, Fletcher had killed quite a few cows, but hadn't got a bull, and so I still felt like I was Fletcher's best chance at getting a bull, and so I spent a lot of time with Fletcher, and Saxon got. I don't want to say stuck, but in a way he got stuck with my dad, his grandpa, and they sat a tree stand. They sat a place we called the open woods. But you know, Saxon's first year sitting in a tree stand, a cow came in with a spike, and you whack that spike, you know, which is
Yep.
awesome. He was completely alone at that point. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if you wanted to kill that spike or you were just tired of sitting in the tree stand, but yeah. And then the second year, I was still with Fletcher, and I made you sit with Grandpa, and what went down there?
Oh, had a raghorn. We were eating pizza actually a little bit beforehand, and just had finished, and a raghorn walked by with a cow and a calf, and it was pretty spot on. It's 30 yards. I think Grandpa ranged it for me, and I shot.
Yep. So got his second bow elk, second year, you know, raghorn, and bigger than the first year. What we all kind of want, you know, hoping that you get something better and better and better. And yeah, pretty cool though. So even though he was stuck by himself or with Grandpa a little bit those first couple of years, he made it happen. And then I think by that third year, you were on your own,
Hmm.
maybe. Yep.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and making it happen.
Hmm.
So has a pile of bulls racked up already. Um, when you tie that in and kind of how you started and your just the way that you go, and you knew that hunting was something you wanted to do, you know, you came to me and you started brainstorming ideas about a brand, you know, and you came up with Wildborn Outdoors because that's really who you are. I mean, Saxon's been good at everything he's ever done. You know, as soon as he touched a basketball, it was apparent he had a ton of coordination and he was great at that. Running came very natural to him, and he was quick and had the endurance to run long and fast as well. And then, you know, he picked up fishing, and fly fishing came naturally to him, you know, where a lot of people struggle with timing and things like that, and that came well. And then it was the hunting, and the hunting became what you wanted to do. But the wild born to me really fits you because you're just born to be out there, you know.
Hmm.
But when you think about that wild born outdoors, what does that represent to you personally?
Basically the same thing. You know, I truly think that the people that succeed at hunting and succeed at the level of it that I'm trying to do, I think that you have to be born to do it. I don't think there's any amount of teaching or anything that you have to have. I think it just comes from pure passion and um, the passion and love for the pursuit and hunting that you were just born with. You just always had that feeling, and I have. Whether it's with the photographer, whether it was with a camera or with it was with a bow, I've always just wanted to do it, and I've had that strong love for it, and it's never. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. People have asked me over the years, you know, what's Saxon going to do? You know, as you know, is he going to go to college? Is he going to do this or that? And to me, you know, when I look at Saxon, I just always knew that he was going to do something in the outdoors. You know, I didn't know if that was going to be guiding or develop into something like this, but easy to see that that's who you were from a pretty young age. You know, I mean, whether it was picking up stick bows and flinging arrows or chasing chipmunks with the BB gun and laying waste to those little buggers. But yeah, it's just always been who you are, and I really think that there's something to that with your success, and we'll get into more of that later on. But you know, even this last year, you know, you killed two big bulls. You're into archery, deer all the time. You know, you killed a antelope with the bow, spot and stalk, not out of a water hole, spot and stalk, second year in a row doing that. Um, and to me, there's just a level of instinct there that that a lot of guys aren't born with, and some don't develop. I mean, I don't think that I have the level of instinct that you have, you know, for it. It just seems like whether it's looking at a map and diving in and figuring out where you're going to go, or when you're out there, just making it happen. That's a struggle, like for me, a lot of times I think over the years, there were times when I was younger and a situation didn't work out, and I said, man, if I was only, had Cameron Hanes instincts, I would have killed that bull,
Right.
And now I think about it like God, what would Saxton do right now,
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think there's a lot to that. I think that there are folks who forget, if you watch pro football, pro basketball, or even college, NCAA Division I, basketball, football, those types of sports, where you have to be born with a certain level of ability in addition to a crazy amount of work and skill building, over years to reach that level. And I think a lot of people forget that even though hunting is available to all of us, and you don't have to be at that level to enjoy it, to love it, to have a lifetime of enjoyment doing it, the really consistent killers, the ones who, wow people that they're killing big animals and they're doing it consistently, I really do think that there's something to that. Not everybody is born with that level of instinct and drive to get out there every day, to do all the scouting. But when the rubber meets the road and you have to make those decisions on the fly in the moment, that's something that I think you're born with to a certain extent.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you've developed on top of that, but as far as like my contribution to that, it'd be easy for me to sit back and say, yeah, I taught him everything I know, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I think we got a foundation going. There's a strong foundation of hunting principles that we follow, whether that's wind or how slow you have to really go when you're trying to sneak into close range on a mule deer or whatever it is like that. But the instinct and the making those decisions in the truth of the moment, that's inside,
Yeah.
So, and that's been really fun for me to watch. And you mentioned photography, and that's something that Sax and I started doing a couple of years ago. I think probably right about when COVID hit. I ended up having a little bit more time, and we started hitting that pretty hard. And Saxon got himself a good camera and lens, and just like everything else he's done, he just has an incredible eye for the photography, And why don't you tell us a little bit about how wildlife photography has changed the way that you look at animals when you're hunting?
Yeah, 100%. I think that sitting there, even in a national park or wherever we do it, the animals are not necessarily, they don't care about anybody around them, but they still act exactly like they would in the woods. And I think that sitting there and not having the pressure of trying to kill them or just getting to watch them, like even at times I wouldn't say it got boring, but at times we were like, they're going to bed down, so we're not going to have anything to do. I think we got so used to just sitting there, watching their behaviors, knowing what they're going to do, that it really helped like take a step back and notice that they are just animals, and they're not this complex animal that you really need to like, really jog your brain about. Like they eat, they drink, they sleep, and that's pretty much it. And then they have, of course, all their elk have their calls and their vocalizations and behaviors like that. But it really helped me, take a step back and just realize that they are just animals that you can learn about. And then once you learn about them, that there's nothing you can't do.
Yeah, they're not too complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that the thing that keeps it more fun and maybe not boring, even though I think we know a lot about elk, we know what to expect from them. But the cool thing is, especially like we love bow hunting, we love the rut, we love engaging with those bulls. And the cool thing about that is you never know exactly how that bull's going to respond, and it's always different. And I think that's what really keeps a lot of fun in it for me, is that we know certain things that feel like it gives us the edge, but when it comes down to like the rut and how those bulls are going to react and how you have to adjust for the herd and all the eyes and all of those things and the mood of a particular bull, it's still, man, huge challenge.
Oh, definitely. There's still, no max amount of knowledge you can learn about them. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the photography, do you think that it's made you more patient as a hunter and more selective because of, getting to be around a lot of big bulls, a lot of herd bulls, seeing that interaction, seeing seeing what's really out there, because we live in an area where we're close to a lot of elk, but it's high pressure elk. It's over the counter tags for residents. And so you're going to see, if you drive up and down the road, there's just dozens and dozens of vehicles parked every day of the week, doesn't matter what day it is, off the road hunting. And so those elk get a lot of pressure. So do you think that and the elk in our area, they don't have great genetics, there's some big bulls here and there, but overall you got a lot of small framed short bulls, even if they're sixes. And so did the photography, do you feel like it made you more patient and selective in wanting bigger, more mature animals?
Definitely, yeah. Especially because there's just, we're kind of close to everything, even the bulls, the big bulls we do see in Estes and stuff. And it just really opened my eyes about being selective and picking the mature bulls, especially being around that many big bulls. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And walk me through like what's going on in your head when you're photographing an animal instead of trying to kill it.
I definitely have more of a artistic eye when I'm photographing. I do think they're beautiful, amazing animals, and so I try to give them as much, what's the word? As much.
Yeah, the respect.
Yeah,
and
respect,
honor.
and that I can, and so I try to make them look as beautiful as they are. And so I think, most of the time I get into kill mode when I have a rifle or a bow in my hand. And so, and that's just like getting that shot, doing what it takes to get in the position to get the shot, and things like that. And so it's definitely less, I'm not so worried about getting the shot, in terms of taking it with the camera. I'm more just admiring them and taking what I can.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you do have just an incredible eye for it. And I feel like, I don't know if you feel this way, but and we've touched on it a little bit, but I feel like when we really started diving into those elk, even though they're not as concerned with people, I do feel like it made me a better hunter just being around them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
With the camera.
Definitely helped me learn more things. Yeah, just things that you were just like, oh, wow, like, they're a lot chiller doing this than you thought, not being able to see them calling through the woods and stuff, and they're just like laying down bugling or whatever.
Yeah, because I think maybe even now, even though we've been in those situations, you hear a bull bugle and you don't really think about what he's doing at that moment where he's at. I feel like I hear that bugle and I'm in reaction mode, like, okay, what can I do to get closer or to pull him into a situation that I want? And I'm not really thinking about exactly what he's doing. And he could have responded to my bugle, or he could just be talking to his cows down there, or just talking to himself, talking to talk, or if he could be laying down, he could be, just eating a mouthful and then felt frisky, and so that's something we kind of get to see behind the scenes a lot of times with the photography,
right? Yeah,
and we don't think about when we're in that kill mode.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially that big meadow in Estes where you can see all the bulls and what they're reacting to each other, and it's interesting
for sure. Cool. Do you feel like you have times where you feel like you're going to choose the camera over the bow, or the bow over the camera? Like this season, you had a packed season, and we didn't get out with the camera very much. Do you find yourself like regretting that, or enjoying one or the other more, but feeling pressure because you have that tag in your pocket, or what's that like for you?
It's definitely a lot of the pressure has to do with it, having all the tags that I did and getting those animals killed. But I think my passion definitely started with hunting. As much as I like capturing the beauty and videos and photos of the animals, I think I'd definitely rather have a bow in my hand. But it's still a very hard decision, especially being that close and getting to have experiences photographing that you wouldn't have if you were hunting. It's just different. They are wild, and you don't get much close interactions unless something happens, and then it's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So what do you think a lot of hunters miss about, could be elk, but animals in general, because we photograph a lot of other animals as well, but what do you think that they miss out because they're always focused on killing and not necessarily observing the animals?
Mostly just learning about them. I think that the more time you spend in with them, whether it's with the bow or whether it's scouting or whether it's photographing, it's all different. And I think that photographing, yeah, you really get to sit there and learn about them rather than worrying about killing them and everything, rather than what's going on and what they're thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's just a real relaxed environment, and it is a learning environment. Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely think that that has given us a leg up for sure. Let's talk about a little bit of your bow hunting journey, maturity, decision making. You passed on some really solid deer with the bow this year, right? In velvet. I know you really want a mule deer in velvet. Um, but you also like big animals and you like to hold out for big animals and you've got a really strong will for that. And you passed on deer that I would have shot with the bow in a heartbeat, you know, and you got to spend a lot of time with some of the ones that you passed on, and that is not easy for a lot of guys, and that's why I have a lot of small deer around here, you know, because I like killing and I have a really hard time holding back. But you know, how do you decide when not to shoot?
I One of the big contributing factors is the goals I have, and I don't like to sway away from my goals, even though the opportunity is right there in front of me. But it's really hard. It's a big emotional part for me, and so whatever feels right in my heart, I tend to do. One of the biggest mule deer that I got into bow range was opening day. The velvet, a really good velvet buck. And it was opening day. I had my goals back in the back of my mind. He wasn't exactly what I wanted. Um, there was certain things that were like, man, I should really shoot this buck.
Yeah.
But it's just the emotional pull that is stronger than the trigger finger that I had to shoot him, that I was able to pass on him.
Yeah, yeah, gotcha. And I think that that's really important, you know, the goal setting. And I think a lot of folks miss that. I know I have, which is kind of funny because I've spent most of my life being really goal oriented, whether that was athletics or business or whatnot, very goal oriented. But I think I strayed away from that a bit with hunting, you know, because maybe I was told, you know, it shouldn't be that way or it shouldn't be that intense. But if you don't have the goals, a lot of times you come down and maybe it's a hard decision and you hesitate, or you end up shooting smaller animals, you know, like I have over the years because I'm just happy with getting it done. So I think that goal setting is a huge piece. So are there goals that you can share with us that you have? I know sometimes that can be really personal, but what are your goals with you know, like the mule deer? You know, what made you pass on a solid deer, but not a huge deer?
Especially with mule deer. Well, for years I never got a buck that had both deep back forks and front forks, and that was just pretty.
Yeah,
Like a lot of my deer are either a lot smaller than that, or they're 4x4s and they just have really pinchy. I wanted a really beautiful, 4 point frame buck that was preferably more mature. But that was my main goal. And then velvet would have been a bigger contributing factor if there was a pretty buck in velvet, but it was a hair smaller than I wanted. But yeah, that's really just what I wanted. I was just a really pretty buck
yeah,
when
yeah.
genetics around here are just really poor.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the challenge, and I think kind of why, like for me, I would have slammed that buck on opening day just because I know what genetics are like, and man, our deer herds are just suffering
Mm-hmm.
here so bad, and the pressure has just ramped up, and seems like as soon as we find a decent place for ourselves, then the next year it's had a lot of pressure, and
Yep.
yeah, just really tough. And hopefully this year we've got a plan where we'll get into some better bucks. And
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, cool. And we're going to get into it more in a minute, but not only did you pass that muley, but you had some good elk tags in your pocket. And one of the most impressive things about your ability to pass on animals is the kind of elk that I've seen you pass on. And so you did have a limited quota elk tag that you drew here in Wyoming,
Yep.
and you'd spent a ton of time in that area collecting sheds, and kind of knew some of what was out there, and you knew there were really big bulls, and had seen them yourself. How many bulls do you think, where I'm getting ahead of the schedule here, but how many bulls do you think that you passed on in September?
I would say upwards of 80 something. It might be close to
Yeah.
100.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking that. And I think there's probably a lot of guys that would hear that and think that that's absolutely crazy. But again, we're talking about a limited quota area. And Saxon had not hunted ever a limited quota area before that. And yeah, just really wanted to hold out
Yep.
for a big mature bull. And so past some incredible bulls, past an amazing freak that I would have shot in half a second. Yeah, yeah. And we'll talk more about that later. And I'm going to be showing clips of all these animals throughout this podcast. But just to kind of give guys an idea that he's not kidding when he talks about how many bulls he passed, and even good bulls that other guys definitely would not have passed on, you know. But we'll get more into that in a minute. What do you think is harder, executing a shot on an animal you want, or walking away from one that you know that you could kill?
I would say walking away from one that you know you could kill, only because I do love it so much and I do get into kill mode. And so when something doesn't work out, or maybe it's just my decision to not shoot, it hits pretty hard. It's like, did I make the right decision? When an animal's there when I want to kill it, most of the time, I mean, I'm in kill mode and I think I can get that animal killed. And so it's not really that difficult for me. But yeah, walking away from a buck or a bull that you don't know if you'll see anything bigger, you don't know if that was the right decision or not, that's pretty hard. It eats at me for a few days.
Yeah, yeah. So do you think it's more emotion or logic at that point that gets you through that decision?
I think the emotion is the part that makes it hard. I think logic helps me get through it and helps me make the decision.
Yeah, cool. And having thought through those goals ahead of time and just not being willing to settle.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. What kind of standards do you hold yourself to now that you didn't a few years ago when you're hunting? Could be any animal.
I would say holding myself accountable for my mistakes. I've made hundreds, if not thousands, of the same mistake over and over. By the time I was like, all right, I need to stop doing this, and really focus on my mistakes and what I was doing, so I didn't make them over and over. I'd say that's the most important thing that I've found, is just holding myself accountable for my mistakes and making sure I don't make them.
Trying to learn and get better from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll get into more of that in a little bit. Do you feel pressure, internal or external, outward pressure from, trying to, build partnerships and build your brand? Do you feel more of that pressure is on yourself, or just external stuff to shoot animals because the opportunity is there, or because you're trying to shoot trophy animals? How does that all play out for you?
I would definitely think it's more internal. I think for me, it matters a lot more if I'm happy, and again, my goals are just, I'm really hard on myself and I have really high goals. And so there is a little piece that's like, oh, now I got to hold up to, I got a reputation to hold up, and what I've got to do for that. But I really don't think about that. It's just wanting to kill those big animals because I know I can, and I have those goals to do it. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's mainly internal for me.
Okay, awesome. So let's talk elk. I really want to get into your season because it was another outstanding year for you. 2 trophy bull elk with a bow in 2025, at least what I consider to be trophies. I don't care what they score. I mean, they definitely score way, way, way above average, right? They're both really, really great bulls, no matter what kind of word you place on it. Let's talk about your first bull. So you spent a lot of time hunting in Wyoming first on the limited quota tag, right?
Yep.
But you also had a limited quota tag in Colorado.
Yep.
That you didn't even spend any time on for quite a while, right? Yeah. So walk me through that first bull. How many days you spent, what that day kind of looked like, and how that played out for you.
For sure. So I think I remember before season, I was scouting deer quite a bit, a few weeks, maybe even a week before season. And I remember coming home or telling you one morning that I was going to go scout it. And I ended up coming back at I don't know, it was like mid-morning still. And I told you I just got to the mountain, and it's just the the steepest mountain, and I don't think anyone would ever go up there, especially not to scout. And so those bulls are going to be up there. And so I just decided simply not to scout it. I was just going to get mentally prepared to go up there and just go do it a day during season. And so, yeah, I spent the first week or 4 days hunting mule deer, waiting for the rut to kick up. And then I spent a few weeks on end hunting that limited quota in Wyoming. And then it was a day that I had that I felt like it was time to try Colorado. And I went up, early as possible. And that mountain always surprises me. It's still probably the toughest one I've walked in terms of just steepness, not even super far, just incredibly steep. And so I got there and I ended up getting like halfway up it, and it was getting light, and there was elk tracks and elk sign all over it. And I've seen elk and bumped elk there before. And I let off one cow sound, and before that cow sound could even carry through the woods, a bull cut me off, not 80 yards away, barely not visible in this burn. And he just came in on a string, just a small, I think he was a pinchy 6.
That I would have shot.
Yeah. That I was thinking I should have shot the whole morning. But yeah, I called him in to 15 yards. I was full draw. I passed on him, and I remember the whole time, it'd been a couple hours. It takes a couple hours to get up the hill. The whole time I was kicking myself. I went into the year wanting to kill something bigger, but I had the limited quota area in Wyoming, and so I wasn't too worried about it for my first out-of-state tag in Colorado. And so I pretty much went into it like I was going to shoot pretty much anything that got me excited. Just I wanted something mature, but pretty much anything. And so the whole time I was kicking myself, I was contemplating whether I made the right decision. Wasn't hearing or seeing anything. And then I get to the very top where I had run into the big bulls when I had hunted it the year before and scouted it for deer. And sure enough, there was a giant 7x6, different from the one I killed, heading up this drainage. And the wind there was really different. It was weird. I've never had the wind go up in the morning. The thermals might have been going down. The wind might have been going up. I'm not exactly sure.
Well, it was hitting that
yeah.
spot. Yeah.
And it was going everywhere. I could have been a little more patient with the stock than I was, but I ended up going into the patch of trees he disappeared in, and I bumped him, and I think he had a few cows in there as well. And soon after that, I didn't know exactly what happened. I just heard a bunch of hooves, and I make a few cow sounds, maybe a bugle, and all of a sudden a bull bugles, and he sounds like he's 60 yards away through the trees, like right there, and he sounds big. And so I set up the camera, I get a shooting lane, I get into the open stuff. There's like tundra, and then there's patches of trees shooting up. And I remember calling, and it sounds like this bull's a mile away, like barely can hear him, barely can make out it was a bugle. And then the next time he'd bugle, he'd sound like he's 60 yards away, and I get excited, and I push record on the camera, and I get all ready. And then he'd bugle again, and he sounds like he's 5 miles away. It was pretty crazy what the contour and stuff was making him.
What direction
sounds.
He had the head turned.
Yep. And I remember looking up, and this high country stuff, it's so big, it's so steep, but you get high enough and it's just tundra and rock shoots. And I remember looking up and seeing a cow almost basically at the tippy top of this big open knoll, and then another cow, then another cow, then another cow. And I kept calling. They kept looking over and acknowledging that they heard me. And eventually this giant 7x7 bull walks out with the cows, and he bugled even right at me. And one of the times I didn't even hear him. I don't know what. It was just the way the contour was and the trees and everything.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure exactly what to do, so I like to sit there, and even though you could see him, I like to sit there and call just in case he had some reason to come down. Piss him off and make him want to come down and chase off another bull or whatnot.
And he had the advantage being uphill, so that was good.
Yep. And he had all the cows. He had a ton. It was probably a group of 30, 35. And all of a sudden they all start bedding down. He beds down. They don't really care. And I decided to go straight up at him and put on a stalk. And again, that stuff is so steep and big that it took me probably 20 minutes to get to where he was, but it was so steep that it gave me enough contour. Like it was pretty much all open, like there was no cuts or anything. But it was pretty much so steep that I was able to just lay flat against the hill until I got within range. And I remember him sitting next to this big rock, and I think it was 70 yards. And I was just gonna wait until he stood because I didn't see his antlers yet. Then I saw his antlers move, and I went up a little higher to range his antlers, and it said 65. Um, and I basically waited there. I don't even think I was out of the rangefinder at that point yet. I might have just put the rangefinder down, and I saw on the corner of my eye a cow just sprinting towards the bull to my right, and that's the way the wind was going. It was kind of going right into the right and up, and I was like, shoot, they must have smelt me. And I see the bull stand. I already had a arrow knocked at that point, just stay ready. And I remember drawing right when he was in the process of standing. And I remember putting the pin on him, and it was just perfect. I settled down at 65 and squeezed, and I just remember the arrow going straight over the tundra right into his body. So
Awesome.
just
Awesome.
awesome.
Very cool. And that's what happens when you pass on small bulls and give yourself the opportunity at big ones. Yeah. And so, and another great example, just instinct. Didn't have to sit there and call, didn't feel discouraged necessarily because the calling wasn't working. He switched tactics, switched into stock mode, and still made it happen, and I think, being able to call that audible and make it happen is just a huge part of the game, where a lot of guys might have just sat back and thought that there's no way that they could do it, or maybe thought that if they didn't pressure them, maybe they'd have another opportunity later. But we've experienced, that doesn't work out a lot of times too, and that opportunity never comes if you don't try to make it happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So beautiful. And he is a cool bull, so much character and different angle to him in addition to being a big bull. And yeah, awesome. All right, let's dive into bull number 2, which actually was the priority and what you hunted most of the season. So hunted several weeks. In fact, I looked up the date of it today. So was it the 25th when you killed the Wyoming bull? So the 25th. So he had put in just about every single day except for the first 4 days of mule deer. So that would have been 21 days. And a day to kill your Colorado bull and a day to pack him out was 2 more. So 19 days, I think, that you had hunted the Wyoming bull before you decided to make it happen, I think. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how that season went. We already talked about passing probably on around 80 bulls, and just kind of how that finally ended up, why that bull was the one and how that happened.
Yeah, it was actually really hard because the first day that I went out elk hunting that unit after the 4 days of hunting mule deer, I found a giant. It was a really close call. Probably should have made it happen, hindsight. But it didn't, and I never saw that bull again. I hunted that little spot, I don't know, probably 4 days in a row trying to find that bull, called in a bunch of smaller bulls in that same spot. And then I changed tactics. I went way higher in the middle of the mountain, and that's when I really got into a lot of different bulls, a lot of 6 points, multiple freaks. And then after that, doing that for multiple days, it started raining really hard, and so it was just pouring rain, so it was really hard to hunt. But at times the bulls were fired up, and at times they weren't bugling at all. But
I remember me writing. He had cell service at times when he'd be up on a ridge, and I'd ask him how it was going. He'd be like, "Yeah, I'm looking at a dozen bulls right now, but they're just laying there, like not even responding to my call." And
Yep. Yeah, and then the next day it'll be completely different. It was amazing. They were bugling like crazy. Called in 5 bulls, and it was just crazy. But the rain got so bad that I wanted to get into the open stuff, because in the timber you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know. I'd rather see bulls than not see them and wonder what's going on. And I'm glad I did. I found, I don't know how many bulls and cows were in that big group that I was chasing for a while, but it was a lot. Probably 50 altogether, 50 bulls, and then probably triple that in cows. But ended up seeing a ton of big bulls. The private was an issue there, and so a lot of the giant bulls stayed on private with their cows. Every once in a while they'd slip up and go into the open stuff. But that kind of shoved me into a spot where I can see a lot of different ground and try different spots. And I ended up seeing a group of cows, probably 20, 25 cows, with a smaller bull, but I couldn't tell because it was so far that I glassed from that last spot. And so the next day, I kind of glassed the first spot, didn't see anything, went to the other spot, and I saw the bull and his cows, and I just wanted to get a closer look. And so I went around 3 miles, put a stalk on. I got within bow range of this big group of cows and this bull, and he was just super underwhelming. He was a lot smaller than what I wanted. But in that stalk, I looked over about 3 miles, whatever direction that was, and saw a really big bull with 30 cows again. And I wanted to go take a look at him. I thought he was big enough this time. So I went out, walked 3 more miles over there in the same day, put on a stalk, got within bow range, and that ended up being the bull I killed. And the whole time, the minute I got within bow range, I kind of just decided this was the bull. Just an emotional thing for me. I mean, I had my goals, and he was plenty bigger than anything I've ever killed. So there was that part, but he was just a beautiful, typical frame. He checked off a lot of my lists, so I really wanted to kill him after that. And it was actually pretty hard because that stuff is so open and there's no trees, no cover. But luckily they were on the edge of this base of this hill out there that had a few trees. But I mostly was hiding behind these giant boulders and sagebrush and stuff like that. And I ended up getting 65 yards of him and his cows. He was with his cows. And I had to hold off because there were so many cows and there's a calf bedded right below me. And it was killing me, but I didn't want to draw and make him aware that I was there. And so I passed on him at 65 right there. And he ended up going 50 yards to the left, still at the base of the hill, but just away from his cows from where they were bedded because there was a raghorn and 2 spikes bedded over there. So he wanted to stay in between the spikes and his harem of cows. And I ended up going around a little bit to get in sight of him because he went out of sight from the rocks. And I ended up being 85 and probably watched him bed, stand back up, bugle, chase off a bull, bed back in the same bed, probably for 30 minutes. And I was just sitting there waiting for him to stand and then go over to his cows because the cows were kind of below me and to the right. And so if he had went to harem up his cows, then he would be within bow range, at least 65 yards. But something spooked them. I don't know what. I don't know if it was the wind going crazy or what. And they all stood up, and I decided to take an 85-yard shot since I was sitting there forever and I was prepared to take that shot. And I shot, and it wasn't a perfect shot, but by the time it was dark, he was dead. So
You're done.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Hard decisions to make. Easy to armchair quarterback, but man, hard decision to make. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the good thing is it's a little bit different. If you had stumbled upon him, let's say you were in the timber and you stumbled upon him, and even if it was you had an opening and he was at 85 yards and it was there, you see him, there you make the decision, you're going to shoot at 85. That's a lot different than being able to sit there for that long, calm your nerves, think it through, understand the wind, and what all is going to go into that,
Yeah,
So
for sure.
that's 2 different scenarios there for sure. Yeah. And in seeing how you shot and throughout the summer and season and seeing some of the shots you made, you were undoubtedly prepared for that shot.
Yep.
Yeah, no question. What do you think between those 2 bulls, how would you compare the first and the second? Mentally, tactically, how would you draw the comparison there?
They were both very different from anything I've killed because I've never spot and stalked elk before. It's always been calling and in the timber.
Yeah.
And so that was really different for both of them. The first one was especially different because I had never hunted elk or deer really in the high country. And so that was really hard.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that helped was killing a really big bull in that Colorado unit. And then being able to say, well, I just killed the biggest bull of my life. Like I don't like that pretty much checked off my goals, and so it was a lot easier being able to shoot something that I maybe not would have shot earlier in the season in the Wyoming unlimited quota area. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's an awesome bull that 99.99% of guys would be tickled pink with, you know. Um, yeah, I think that a lot of that comes down to confidence too, you know. I mean, you made a pretty long shot on that Colorado bull as well, you know, and you
Yep.
did it spot and stock. And so that's just a lot of confidence, and then roll right into the next one where that ends up being a spot and
Yep.
stock long
Yeah.
shot too.
Yep.
Yeah, you were,
hmm
you know, that had to help.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
cool. How do you think patience played a role in both of those encounters? Because a lot of, you know, in the podcast, I talk a ton about patience, you know, and how important that is, and why I would say the majority of stocks and the majority of guys that struggle with being successful, even when they are having encounters, it comes down to patience. But yet, you also talk about being an aggressive hunter. You told me the day before I killed my bull, I'd been very patient for 3 weeks, and the patience had not been the right play on a couple of different occasions. And you told me, you know, man, the next time you get one screaming, just cut off that distance as soon as you can, get aggressive and make it happen. And when that bull screamed that next day after we had that conversation, that had just been what I was on my brain. That's what I was thinking about. And normally I would have probably played that a little bit safer. And I just ran at him, only took 3 bugles, didn't need the last bugle. It took 2 bugles before he shut up, and I raked on a tree, and there he was, you know.
Yep.
Um, and so I really think that aggressive piece made it happen
hmm
for me. So how do you think that patience played into those two, and why? I've got a reason why I'm asking you that, but
I would say, gosh, it's hard because there's a time and place for patience, and then there's a time and place where patience wouldn't have worked at all. But for the first bowl, I would say that being able to sit there and watch them until they bed down, and you know, it's easy to make a story sound, you know, fast paced and stuff, but the time it took from when I started to go after them, when I dropped the pack, when I looked on Onyx to make sure I was going the correct way, checking the wind every step of the way, going up that steep mountain, trying not to fall or slip on rocks or make it loud. You know, all those things took patience, especially even when I was right there, ready to shoot. But you know, he was bedded down, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen. Um, definitely, patience played a role in all that, and then of course, aggression took its took its turn when I actually decided to go after him and shoot or whatnot.
yeah,
It was a lot bigger on the Wyoming limited quota bowl because you know, I had to not only make a very long stalk in open country, but I had to sit there for a long time watching this bull in shooting range, not shooting him, and then waiting until he stands to get closer, and then not knowing if I should shoot then or not. And so patience plays a huge role, especially when you're waiting on an animal to do whatever he's going to do and not knowing what's going to happen.
yeah, absolutely. And I guess what I wanted to get at was, you know, I think that newer hunters or guys that watch the podcast or listen, you know, they're looking for the keys to the kingdom, right? They're
Right.
looking for the tactics that are going to help them kill, and they want it to be cut and dried. And I think that there's fundamentals and there's principles that we follow, but when it comes down to it, it's all situational, right?
Yeah.
It's reading the situation, it's reading the bull and his mood, it's reading the herd dynamics. So many things come into play, right? I mean, wind, terrain, all of it, right? And so it's never going to be cut and dried. I try not to use the word never or always, you know, when we talk about elk and mule deer hunting specifically, because as soon as you say that, there's going to be an exception to the rule.
Yep.
But I think that that's really important. Yeah, what you just pointed out there is that, you know, it's situational, and really to learn how to handle those situations, you've just got to be in them, you know,
Yep.
over and over
Yep.
again and get that experience.
Yep.
And absolutely Cool. So what mistakes do you think that you avoided that a lot of bow hunters might make in those situations?
Whether it be patience or aggression, like I needed to be more aggressive. I try to like foresee what's going to happen. And so if I think something's not going to happen, if I don't be aggressive, I try to avoid making that mistake and actually being aggressive while I'm in it rather than sitting there contemplating whether I should do it or not and missing my opportunity. But my thing has always been like the most mistakes I've made have either been not being aggressive enough in a situation or being too aggressive in another situation. And so I try not to make those mistakes.
Yeah.
Just really pick apart the situation and make sure I'm making the right decision.
Okay. Yeah, and that's really hard, discipline versus aggression, which one is key. So I hear some guys talk about, oh, you got to be aggressive out there, I probably lean the other way and lean on patience and being quiet and playing the wind and all of those things, but definitely a balance. And they don't even have to be separate during the occasion, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there might be times where you have to be disciplined in your wind and disciplined in your terrain and your approach and how you're using shadows or making sure that there's something to break up your outline or whatever. But there's also aggressiveness in getting into that position, and how you cut the distance or the angle and those sorts of things.
Yeah, totally situational. It totally depends on the situation. Yeah, like sitting there watching a mule deer buck bed, not being able to get closer, out of range, and then instead of watching him stand up and feed over the hill, like the minute he crests that hill, I'm sprinting up to try to get a shot skyline, or it changes from sitting there all day to being able to sprint up there if something changes like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Good call. So another huge success for you in my book was your 2025 pronghorn antelope, spot and stalk with a bow, again, second year in a row. First year that he tried it was the year before, last year, and super successful, had a ton of stalks, in very, very open country. I have a lot of guys write me or call me and complain about how open their antelope area is and kind of treat it like it's an impossible thing to make happen.
Yeah.
But you absolutely made it happen over and over again, and then did it again this year. So tell me about that, because it's a different game, right? And so what is the biggest challenge when you're out there trying to spot and stalk those pronghorn?
Biggest challenge is definitely the contour, how flat it is, how nothing you have to hide behind. I would say that, most guys don't stay low enough. That's just simply the biggest thing that I think is staying low enough, going slow enough. Their eyesight is just incredible, and you don't have much to work with, so you gotta stay as low as possible and go as slow as possible.
Yeah, not be afraid to belly crawl.
Yeah.
For sure, absolutely, yeah. So, how do you think terrain, wind, and timing all factored into that kind of hunt?
Definitely, again, strong on the terrain. It's just almost impossible. You gotta have something. Definitely can't go straight at them with nothing. But even the smallest little creases can help you out to get close enough, or just a steeper hill over here and a lower one over here or whatnot. But wind was surprising actually this year. I never really had thought about wind for some reason. Just pronghorn just never struck me as, which could have blown stalks previous years, and I just didn't know it was wind. But wind was a big learning curve this year. I circled the perfect stalk on bucks and went up, and there was no bucks because I'm guessing they smelt me because the wind was so strong that way.
Yeah, we kind of put it in the back of our mind because their eyesight's so good. We're just trying to beat the eyes all the time. Yeah, and I had the same thing happen this year with ears on a close stalk on a buck. He actually heard me, and I thought I was being fairly quiet, but just one wrong step, and I saw his head turn sideways. Saw his horns turn, and that was that. And I was just thinking that as long as I was out of his eyesight, I was good. But,
right? Yep.
So they do have other defense mechanisms.
Yep, definitely.
For sure.
Maybe not as big as other animals, but still there.
Yeah, especially when you're inside 50 yards on them, trying to close that distance. Yeah. So what did all those stalks really teach you about closing the distance on an animal that relies so much heavily on eyesight?
Again, just stay as low as possible and go as slow as possible. You have all day in the sun. They bed for quite a long time. They don't bed in shade, so they don't have to switch shade pockets or whatnot. And when they do stand, they aren't going to be feeding for that long most of the time, unless it's morning or night when they're transitioning into their next bedding zone for the night or whatnot. So
Yeah.
I would say definitely just stay slow and very, very low.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think is one mistake bow hunters consistently make when they're spot and stalking pronghorn?
Not staying low enough.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I've watched tons of videos on YouTube, and they're just, I don't know if it's just because they don't have the patience or whatnot to be able to do nose to the dirt for sometimes 30 minutes straight until you get into bow range, or if they just don't think it matters that much. But dozens of blown stalks before they actually get a shot, and they're not even on their knees. And so I just, really big on the stay low.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's shift gears again, because another huge part of your successful 2025, in my opinion, is your shed hunting.
Okay.
So over 350 elk and mule deer sheds just this year, just this season. That's no accident.
No.
No. So what does a typical shed day actually look like for you? And you might even want to back that up a little bit, because it's not like you're just going out there and randomly hoping that you end up in the right spot, So just tell us a little bit about what that looks like for you. How do you decide where you're going? How much time do you spend doing that? And then how does the day evolve for you?
Yeah, for sure. So I start with Onyx, and I've used Google Earth as well if I can't see what I want to see on Onyx. And over the course of weeks or years since I've started shed hunting, I get used to seeing certain things and being able to look on Onyx and find other areas that are exactly the same, that I'm like, well, if that spot has sheds, this must too. But I'll look on Onyx for, whether it be the night before or days before, I'll be looking on Onyx for sometimes hours and hours straight, just staring at different stuff, not feeling good about something, and picking a different spot that I feel better about. Hours and hours spent on Onyx. I think that's the biggest contributing factor. We're just all looking off of Onyx and walking the miles.
Yeah.
But then aside from the scouting on Onyx and stuff like that, I would get up. I'd basically treat it like hunting. I want as much time in the day as possible, so I'd get up in the dark, when I'd have to drive 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever. Get to my spot. I usually had to walk 2 miles, 3 miles at least before I started getting in the first sheds. And a typical day would be 15 to 20 miles. And I figured from daylight to dark, having a good shed day, having time to walk around breaks, picking up sheds, it all came out to around 20 miles that I could do, physically and just realistically. Actually having a good shed day, having a bunch of sheds on your pack from daylight to dusk was around 20 miles.
Yeah.
Yep.
Crazy. Yeah, and I think it's important for guys to hear that, getting 2 or 3 miles in before even finding sheds, because you got to get away from the roads, right? Because the first 2 or 3 miles are easy for everybody. So yeah, getting out there further was a real key.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Yep.
and putting on all those miles. And I hear that 15 to 20 number thrown out there all the time. Guys will be like, yeah, I had a 20-mile day hunting elk today. And a lot of times I roll my eyes, because it probably wasn't 20 miles.
Oh, yeah.
It was probably 5 miles that felt like 20 miles.
Yep.
But for you, I 100% know for a fact that it's 15 to 20 miles. Do you still have the crispy boots that you wore the prior year? Those pair that you wore the tread off of?
I do not think I have them in my pictures, but
because he wears the soles off his boots. Good quality boots. I mean, a heavy duty pair of Mountain Crispies, just completely wore the treads right off of them. That's how many miles he's putting in. And so you hear 350 sheds in a season, you think, oh, well, he just has some amazing spots. I feel like when I watch social media, guys like, whether it's Eric Chesser or, Big Time Crit or
Martin Chag,
100%, that those guys have amazing spots, and I'm sure that that's just my perception, and they are just putting in a lot of miles and working their butts off. But that's the case here as well, right? So how much of it do you think of your success is mileage versus strategy?
it's hard because I do spend a lot of time on Onyx, looking at things like a lot of time. If I don't feel good on it, if I don't feel good about a spot on Onyx, then I won't hit it. And so a lot of time is on Onyx, and it's helped me tremendously, even finding spots that I had hit in the past that were really good, and then finding a new spot that's even better or whatnot. But again, if you go to some of those spots and you only walk 2 miles and you get discouraged or whatnot, then you're not going to find any sheds. And so I think it's a good mixture of both, but mainly I think the miles is what's going to find you what you're looking for.
Yeah, yeah. And would you say that there's a strong similarity between that, a strong correlation between that and actual hunting as well?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Strategy versus mileage.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. You can have the greatest. You have to have a plan. You have to have done your homework.
Yep.
But if you're not willing to follow it up with a lot of time,
100%.
yeah,
Yep.
it's not going to come together.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that the shed hunting has helped you understand a little bit more about winter range and migration and finding animals?
100%. Yep. Yeah, I've been able to go into those spots even because most of the time there will be some animals that stick around. If it's a heavily winter area that tons of sheds, chances are a good number of those will come back in the summer as well and hang around in there all year long. And so, yeah, that's helped me find not only sheds every year, but the animals and every other season too.
Yeah, and places that you want to check out during hunting season.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that definitely helped. So do you? I guess you kind of already answered it, but do you see the shed hunting kind of as scouting and training as well?
Oh, 100%. I think that, like, I was going shed hunting so much there for a while, just every single day, that I hadn't hit the gym in a while because, for one, I wouldn't want to because I've just been getting so much miles in on my legs, and I'd already feel exhausted from the previous day. But yeah, huge contribution to the just staying fit side of things, and definitely scouting. I found some incredible animals shed hunting that I went back and was able to find animals in hunting season. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think the training piece is an important one to note. Just getting out there, and a lot of guys, I would just encourage them to spend way more time getting out there. But when you're putting in 15 to 20 miles a day, hiking around, like, that's going to pay off, and I was amazed when, for me, I have a few more obligations at home, and so I have to do a lot more of my training at home, and so it amazed me when I was doing a bunch of running, and then we would go out together, and how fit you were just from the hiking, and what a challenge it was for me to keep up with you. And I had been running and doing the gym training and whatnot. So yeah, I can't be dismissed, So getting to double dip and scout, shed hunt, and train at the same time, man.
Yeah.
3 wins.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I definitely think the mountain is your biggest factor to get fit for the mountains.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's shift gears again and talk about just a little bit more of kind of the behind the scenes stuff, the ethics and restraint that you show, respect for animals, maybe growth, failure, learning stuff. Let's get into some of those topics for you before we wrap it up. So, I mean, you hunt really hard and you show a lot of restraint. Where does that come from?
I would say that's being out there as much as I am, and respecting it and being born for it again. I think it's something in me that I'm able to not only not wanting it to end because I love it so much, but just loving it so much that I'm able to just, like, I'd rather see 100. I'd rather call in 100 bulls. I'd rather see $100 before I actually pulled the trigger on one. So I think it's all about the experience.
Yeah, making it last.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's cool. What does earning it mean to you in this modern world of hunting?
I think mostly just accomplishing my own goals, and so I don't compare it to anyone else. I think I know what I'm capable of, and if I do what I'm capable of, I think that's an accomplishment by itself. I think if I'm out there doing it and I'm happy too, that helps.
Yeah, for sure. But I think also there's a lot to be said for, again, how much time you look at maps, you know, which a lot of guys don't, you know. And I hear from a lot of guys who maybe don't understand even terminology behind looking at maps or know what they're looking for. But you didn't either. You know, you had to research, you had to learn. You know, we've never had more information at our fingertips than we do now. You Google it, you chat GPT it, they'll draw a picture for you, you know, you figure out what those terms mean and you study it, you know, you learn it. And so that e-scouting is huge, but also just the amount of time out there. How many guys are spending 15 to 20 miles scouting, let alone, you know, shed hanging and doing those things? I mean, to me, it's just the whole idea of earning it, you know. Not only that for you, but I know how much time you spent shooting last year, you know. A lot of guys aren't going to pull the bow out until a week or two before season starts, you know. That's not you, man. You're shooting all the time, even if you've just got to fling a few close in the backyard, you know. That's earning it, you know. Getting down to the gym and training, you know, as much as you can, fitting it in around your schedule. I mean, that's earning it. It's just the whole thing. And I think that you've put all those pieces together. And so I just want guys to understand that this isn't just something where you're lucky, you know, the old go buy Cameron Hanes shirt, the must be nice, you know. This is not a must be nice situation, you know. This is absolutely a spot where you earned it. So that whole picture there is what earning it means to me. So you answered it for you, I answered it for you for me. But, so, you know, how do you balance your ambition and your goals with the respect for the animals that you have?
So I have such a strong passion in pursuing them. And you know, at times it is really, really hard and they make you earn it because of the contour they live in or just how different animals act and how mature bulls are a lot smarter than other bulls or same thing with bucks, deer and antelope. And so, I just think it all contributes into, me knowing how beautiful they are and how amazing they are and what amazing places they live in, but also my ability to beat them at their own game when I pursue them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. I love seeing a lot of your shots when the animal is down, you know, and you're showing response, shots of respect and gratitude. Because that's an important part of what we do as well, you know. And I'm often pretty sad after I kill, you know. And when I think about how awesome those animals are, sometimes I even have to compartmentalize and put that piece in a box. Is it that way for you as well?
Oh, 100%. Yep. Yeah, I love them so much. Like if it weren't for them, couldn't do it. So they're just amazing, and I get humbled by how much they do beat us when we're out there. They're trying to beat them at doing this stuff, and they are just incredible.
Yeah, what they endure, you know, and just what their life is like, and watching elk in particular, you know, and all the animals, but watching elk move across 5 miles in seconds, and it's going to take us hours to cover that same distance, you know. Crazy. So what do you think this season was your biggest mistake that people never saw?
I would say one of the biggest ones is shooting my bow during season. I think that's always a thing that I've had troubles with. I'm out so much, and I just don't want to say it's not a waste of time, but I feel like I'm wasting time if I take the time to shoot my bow and make sure it's on. I do it from time to time, but I think I could get a lot better at making sure it's on. So I think definitely the biggest mistake is not making sure every single time I go out my gear's 100% on.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I think Joel Turner, you know, shows himself, you know, shooting at a target, even just for a warm up, get those first couple of pulls out of the way at close range, you know, before they hunt every day. And I think that's a great tip, probably, you know, just throw that foam target out there and just fling at least one, you know. But that's great. Yeah, that's good insight and something that I always skip as well. Yeah, and shouldn't. What do you think, what failure taught you the most this season?
I would say the first time I went out for my limited entry Wyoming tag, and I found that big bull. I feel like I made quite a few mistakes when I was up close and personal, and he was in some thick timber. I think I had a lot more room to work with, a lot more just they were down there. There was the big bull, and then there was a cow and a calf that I knew exactly where they were, and I think I had a lot more play, and I think I just played it a lot too safe. I don't know if it was because he was big and I was just trying to be extra careful or whatnot, but I think I could have played that a lot differently. And it's a part of the aggression and patience thing. But I think I was more scared to act rather than just being patient and waiting for a shot.
Yeah. Okay. 100%. And I think we fall into that a lot. Me, for sure. And I think that's something that I've really liked to see about your hunting is you seem to fall into that trap less, and it took a really big bull to force you into that situation. Where for me, I mean, I can remember dozens of times in my younger years where, well, even last year, where I sat and I should have moved, and it wasn't necessarily being patient. Mm-hmm. It was, but it wasn't. It was also being afraid to move and get busted. Yeah. And so it's a hard balance. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that definitely. Instinct really comes into play. And mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. What do you think the role that hunting alongside your family has shaped in your approach compared to hunting alone?
It's definitely just kind of kicked things off. Like, there's stuff I know now that I wouldn't have known if I didn't get to hunt with you and even Grandpa and just hunting with everybody that taught me before, that kind of just gave me a kickstart. And then there was stuff that I went off and learned by myself that I wouldn't have learned with everyone else. And so it kind of just iron sharpens iron. It's just kind of both contributed into what I know and how I've become the hunter I am.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think something that you learned the hard way over these years that nobody else could teach you?
I think just how I hunt. I think that everyone, if you were to put a guy with a friend or a guy with his family, and then put him by himself, I think everyone would find that they do things different. And so I think that the biggest thing I learned was just how I do things it's just a little different than how I do things with a friend. That's how different that I would do things with family. Basically just like my own groove.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to tell you though that's one of the reasons why I love to hunt with you. Whether we're going out for wildlife photography or whether we're hunting, I call Saxton my lucky rabbit's foot, because for some reason, we are successful far more often than not when mm-hmm. we're together. Yeah. And I don't know what that is exactly. I think that part of it is being on the same page with a lot of fundamentals and just in the way we hunt. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of that also is, now that he's gotten older and I've seen the way his instincts have played out, I try to follow his lead in a lot of situations, and I don't know, it just works out, mm-hmm. Whereas, we just did a stalk on some cows the other day is a good example. And, I think I would have probably done the exact same thing that we did, I feel like, if I was on my own. But yet I checked with Saxton 20 times as we walked in on that stalk, hey, what would you do? We can't see them. The wind's doing this, the snow's doing this. There's deer running around everywhere. Don't want to bump them. I want to get them close. And, anyway, it was just kind of cool to be able to bounce ideas off of you and just get the reassurance of, okay, this is what I would do. What would you do? Mm-hmm. And be on the same page with that. I love that. I love being out with you, and I do feel like our success rate is really high. So I can't wait for. We've got a lot of big plans for this coming year, so I can't wait for that.
Me too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've definitely earned a lot of respect from me. I don't respect anybody in the hunting world more than I respect you, even at your young age, because I've seen it in action over and over and over again. Yeah. Just a couple more for you, buddy. What excites you most about the future of Wildborn Outdoors?
Mainly just that part of things giving me the more ability to go out and do it more. I think that eventually it's just going to be, just me yeah, I mean, basically the same thing I'm doing now, just a lot more of it. And so it's just, I just can't wait to be able to hunt a lot more, hunt a lot of different places, meeting new people, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you motivated more by, success or the process?
Probably, probably the process. It's been long and it's hard. It's hard because things like this take time. But I think eventually, when I do succeed the way I want to and achieve my goals, I think it'll be much cooler than just being driven by what's going to happen and then being there and not being happy with where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just been very genuine the way that you've done it. I mean, people can look at what you do, and on one hand, some people might wish that they had what you already have. Some people might be in awe of things you've already done. But that's just, to me, like, that's just who you are, and those things have happened. The things that you post are who you are because you're out there all the time doing it,
Yep.
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 Yep. And so even when it seems wild to folks how much you post and how many cool things you post, it's just because you're out there all the time, and that is your lifestyle.
Right.
Where a lot of social media, you only get to see the fairy tale side of what people are doing. Like for you, that's just how it is.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's really cool.
100%.
Yeah. If somebody could only take away one lesson from your season this year, what would you want it to be?
Oh gosh, that's hard. That's really hard because there's so much to learn about different animals. Every animal's different. Every hunting is different. Every situation is different.
What about, maybe one of the things that was a challenge or put a pit in your stomach, or cause you to have to make an important decision, because those are the kinds of things that I feel like if you're struggling with at your level and the things that you've already accomplished, like we're probably all dealt with it.
Right. I would say at times, going as much as I do, it does get overwhelming in a way. And so I would say that it is important to take a step back every once in a while, even if it's just one day, to kind of clear your mind, not go hammer what you've been hammering for weeks on end, but also being able to get through that and keep going, because it can be discouraging sometimes going out, whether you see stuff or not, over and over and over. And I don't want to say it gets boring, but it gets to the point where you're doing the same thing over and over and over. It's hard to see what's going to happen, when you finally do achieve that goal and stuff.
100%. So you nailed it, I think, without even realizing you nailed it. Like, I think that one of the hardest parts for all of us, every single hunter out there, is when it's not coming together, and it's day in and day out, and you're facing the discouragement and frustration, and you've put in the time and the preparation for it, and it's still not happening. And so when you come home and maybe you take a day of reset, or you try to get your head back in the game when you are frustrated, what helps you push forward? What helps you get back on track?
I think mainly just my passion and drive for it just kind of gets me. It just takes a day to make me realize that I love doing it, and seasons are only so short, and so I got to take the most of it, and I still have those goals, and that I can do it. So
yeah, absolutely. And that perspective and those goals, again, comes back to goals, are really important. The other thing that I've seen you do is, and this is probably an ongoing thing, but because he's always looking at maps, but I know that when he has been unsuccessful or has had a frustrating day, doesn't matter whether it's shed hunting, doesn't matter whether it's any of the species hunting out there, it's probably even the same way for fishing sometimes. I think I've seen it, but he'll come back and he'll regroup and look at maps even more, even harder, and I'll see you diving into maps, and really maybe even an area that you've looked at 1,000 times and spent 1,000 hours on, and I'll see you picking it apart more.
Yep.
So is that part of the strategy that helps you as well, get you back on track, get you thinking about how you can make adjustments and do it different the next time?
100%. Yeah. Well, especially because I don't like to focus on one area ever. Like, even if that area is amazing, or I don't know about mazing, but say I called in a few bulls or seen a few bucks or whatever, I like to look everywhere. And so if I spent a bunch of time in there, I like to, look on Onyx for forever and find a spot where it looks great and try new areas. And that seems to help me a lot. Just new areas, new country, new animals.
Yeah, absolutely. As Saxon grew up, fishing is also a huge passion of his. And when we would go out fishing, my dad and I laugh all the time because a lot of times, even when we seem to be catching fish now and then, Saxon will switch lures or flies constantly over and over and over again. So, just catching one now and then sometimes isn't good enough for him. So he'll just keep on switching until he finds something that is just really slamming. And I think that the way that he looks at hunting is very similar. And so I think that has also contributed to a lot of success in all these things, shed hunting and hunting, because you're constantly looking for new spots, more spots, better spots. It's just always, the game never ends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's part of the fun of it. But yeah, it never ends. Even when I do have a good day and a good spot and I'm still planning on going there the next day, I like to look at Onyx and just look for new areas.
Keep planning. Yeah. Awesome. So when you look back on this amazing year, 2 bulls with the bow, great bulls with the bow, another pronghorn, Spot-and-Stalk with the bow. You got a last minute mule deer because you held out and you ended up shooting one with a rifle, another 4x4 deer. Yeah.
Yep.
350 sheds in a season. When you look back on this season, what are you most proud of?
I would say my hard work and determination in both mainly both my bulls. I had a big goal for elk this past year. It was mainly all about elk. I got 2 elk tags for that reason, and I really just did want to kill 2 mature bull elk, and not just about killing big elk, but being able to kill big elk. It's good to prove to myself that I can go kill a big bull if I put in the work and I really want to.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%, man. Well, I couldn't be more proud of you. I'm telling you guys, he is an amazing resource. If you get him one-on-one, you're going to be blown away by what he knows and what he has to offer for picking his brain about especially mule deer and elk hunting. And one of the things that we've teamed up on is Elk Camp 2026 that we're putting on this summer. So we're going to have 4 different weekend dates, the last 2 weeks in June, and then the 2nd and 3rd weekend in July, where you can come out to Laramie, Wyoming with us. It's going to be a camp situation up in the mountains, and we're putting on 3 days of nonstop elk hunting. The biggest part of that is going to be hands-on scenarios where we have a guy down in the timber or up in a crack somewhere bugling, and we're teaching guys how to respond to those situations and make a play on those bulls. But you're going to have access to both of us, and I believe in him so much and what he has to offer at that camp that's why I wanted to partner with him. If I didn't believe in him, we wouldn't be doing that together. And so I highly encourage you, if you want to learn more about elk hunting and take it to the next level, you've got to join us for Elk Camp 2026. I've got that listed on my website at backboneunlimited.com. But I really want you to have the opportunity to learn more from him as well. So he's constantly putting out content on Wildborn Outdoors on YouTube. He's very close to being monetized. If you guys would hop on there and watch some of his videos, you could really push him over the edge on that and help him accomplish some more of his goals. Other than that, how can folks get a hold of you? Where would you like them to go?
Oh, yeah, for sure. You can go on my website, and there's an email there, and I'm sure my phone number's there. Either one of those works. I'm very active on Instagram as well, so yeah.
And the website is wildbornoutdoors.com.
Yep.
And he's Wildborn Outdoors across social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, gaining popularity all the time on all those platforms. So yeah, posting great content. If nothing else, it's motivational, it's inspiring, and it helps me get out there and want to do more and want to do it better. So,
cool.
All right. Thanks, buddy. I can't wait for what we have planned this year.
Me too.
And see more of your continued success. Thank you guys for being here. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.